I'm Natalie Banner. I lead the Understanding Patient Data programme based at the Wellcome Trust. Our aim is to make sure the way that patient data is used is more visible, understandable and trustworthy for patients, the public and health professionals. But what do I mean by patient data? This is data that is routinely collected as part of people's health and care, but it can be used for purposes beyond individual care, such as research and service planning. Because this data may often be used for these purposes without the explicit consent of patients, it is vital that the data is used and managed only in ways that allow people to have confidence in its safety, security, and public benefit purposes. This is why we think trustworthiness in data use matters. And this video will explain a little bit about what we mean by trustworthy. Decision makers often talk about maintaining or preserving public trust in how health data is used. The problem with this approach is that it puts responsibility on people to correctly place their trust in institutions and in people. But people's willingness to trust is highly subjective. It's based on their own values and their experiences and influenced by a whole range of events in the wider context of society. As Baroness O'Neill argues, we should focus instead on how to make systems and institutions worthy of the trust we're asking people to place in them. This means organisations managing and using data can think about the levers they can control, rather than expecting the public to trust by default. We've been thinking about the characteristics and practices organisations can put in place to demonstrate that they are trustworthy. I'm going to talk through the critical ones. It's important to note this is not a complete list or a guarantee that if you fulfill all of these criteria, people will inevitably trust you. It is rather a list of some of the ingredients about being trustworthy with data that we hope you'll find useful. Firstly, and most importantly, what's your motivation? The reasons why data is being collected, stored, and used really matter. And this isn't going to be obvious to many people. People want patient data to be used to improve healthcare. Benefits back to patients and the health and care system have to be prioritised over other reasons, especially if there are financial and commercial incentives driving the data use. Organisations must intend to use data for public benefit and consistently prove this over time. You need to be able to answer the "what's in it for you" question sincerely. And that applies to any user of data, whether it's within the health and care system, academic users, commercial users, or charities. Competence is absolutely critical. Teams need the skills, expertise, and tools to answer the questions they're working on and to follow these through to impact, including, for example, being representative of the population that they're seeking to serve, and having good knowledge of how to handle data safely and securely. It's crucial teams have these skills to make sure data is handled securely and only for its intended purposes. Competence also means being open about how risks are managed. There's no point denying risks exist, but being able to articulate what you're doing to take steps to mitigate any risks to privacy, for example, needs to be done effectively and proactively. In addition to technical competence, communications and engagement skills and experience are needed too. Organisations have to show, not just tell, what the real-world impact of the data uses are. And those kinds of skills are often overlooked. Being able to create a consistent, clear, accessible narrative is vital. Transparency is a term that often gets used to describe trustworthy data use, but it's not always clear exactly what it means. For understanding patient data, we talk about meaningful transparency and say that this is a form of honesty that involves acknowledging uncertainty. Overloading people with all the details doesn't necessarily count. For example, legal terms and conditions may be technically transparent, but they're not exactly brilliant for conveying important information that people need to be able to take on board when making a decision, for example. Putting information somewhere on a website doesn't necessarily mean you're being fully transparent. Transparency is making the things that people care about available and understandable. But to be able to do that requires seeking to understand concerns and being willing to address them openly, even if you don't necessarily have all of the answers at the outset, and as a context or situation might change over time. The technical elements to transparency are important as well. Making code, data, methodology open allows for reproducibility and enables those with the technical expertise to scrutinize what you're doing. Relevant information has to be easy to find, and that might mean being more proactive than just putting information out there on a website or on a patient information leaflet. Governance requires clear, consistent rules to make it easier for people to understand what's happening. A patchwork of different rules, criteria, and processes doesn't inspire public confidence that everyone is playing by the same rules and that there aren't loopholes that certain people can get around. There have to be good controls around who can access what data, when, and how, and this is enabled by technical measures, but it is fundamentally about people. One of the first things the public wants to know is who sees what data and under what circumstances, and how is that controlled? An important aspect of governance is the requirement to develop mechanisms to learn over time and improve decisions and processes. The uses of health data are changing, they're evolving. More data is available from different sources and technology is advancing rapidly. So governance processes have to be able to learn and adapt over time as well. In terms of accountability, it's vital to make it clear who's responsible for what decisions. Providing clarity on what happens if something goes wrong, because when it comes to the use of data, things do go wrong and you can't necessarily always avoid those. So if something does go wrong, being able to explain what sanctions or redress mechanisms are available if the data is misused. Regulations such as the General Data Protection Regulation and Data Protection Law offer legal mechanisms of accountability. But public and democratic accountability is also needed too. Meaningful transparency is an important part of this. It facilitates public accountability by allowing others to scrutinise and challenge if needed. And finally, public participation. Health data is about people and they care about how it's used. They have a stake in it. Giving individuals and society a say in what happens to data is a really important part of building that sense of trustworthiness over time. In England, individuals can opt out of having their confidential patient information used for research and planning, but this is limited. So those mechanisms of individual choice and control are somewhat limited in scope. So we argue that at a societal level, the public should have a say. There should be collective mechanisms of involvement and oversight. Participation should fundamentally shape both the rules around who can access what data and for what purposes, and the decisions about that. They should not be an add-on or a tick box, or just a communications exercise informing people after all of the important decisions have been made. We think this is fundamental to the future of the health data ecosystem. I hope that's been a useful overview of the elements and ingredients of trustworthiness. If you'd like to know more, please take a look at our website or talk to us about what trustworthy use of health data means for you.